Among every shonen antagonist that we come to know over the years, almost none will impose the same level of fear and charisma than the king of all curses Sukuna, and the Chimera Ant King himself Meruem. Not only that, but because of their unique and immense strength they've shown throughout their own series, not that many characters can defeat them on their own, least of all pose a challenge. And for those who could do the latter, well, let's just say the title of strongest no longer belongs to them. However, while both characters were regarded to be the very apex of their own respective universe, even though they're just above city level, if these two were to fight each other, it wouldn't be close. Now, admittedly, before I made this video, I might have indirectly stated that Meruem is stronger than Sukuna in my 7 levels of the power scaling system. So, in order to slightly correct that statement, I went to re-examine the overall abilities of both characters. Plus, being that it's Halloween and all, I thought to myself, why not make this video to celebrate the holiday, since both characters do kinda fit within a horror themed genre. So, without further ado, welcome to Animanko 9000, a channel where we talk about contents related to anime, manga, and other types of media. In this video, I'll be going over why Sukuna vs Meruem will never be close. Fair warning, this video might contain spoilers for you anime watchers out there. And please, if you want to hear more of the contents I mentioned earlier, just subscribe and hit the notify bell. Okay, to kick things off, let's first talk about each character's physical stats, starting with their individual strength. Though to be honest, due to the few impressive feats when showcasing their physical strength, it was difficult to measure at how exactly strong the two were. I mean, initially, I thought that Meruem was physically stronger, and a part of me still thinks that, since he did push back the two hands of Netero's 100 type Guanyin Bodhisattva, and one of his hands could create a deep fissure in the ground, as well as push Pito a great distance away. There's also the matter of how Meruem once ripped his own arm off, a feat that I won't deny kind of overlooked, but upon rewatching how his body withstood Bodhisattva's multiple palm strikes, which altogether was strong enough to dig deep towards underground and not take any damage from them, is basically a clear indication that Meruem was stronger than the then constructed statue. Adding to his post-Poor Man's Rose power-up, his strength could be somewhere above multi-city block level or small town level, thus seemingly making him much stronger than Sukuna. However, after looking back to some of the crazy stuff that Sukuna has done, their strength might be about the same. For instance, during his fight against Maharaga, specifically in the anime and Blu-ray edition, we saw how the Shikigami was not only strong enough to destroy fairly large buildings, but also lift a piece of a tower and threw it at the King of all curses with moderate effort. Yet, throughout this ordeal, Sukuna, who only had 16 fingers at that point, meaning he wasn't at full power, was able to both physically match Maharaga blow for blow, but also overpower it on multiple occasions. Another case is after he took over the body of Fraud Megumi, Sukuna punched Yuji so hard, he actually sent the MC flying across several buildings and temporarily incapacitated him. And FYI, this is the same character who threw a 2-ton car without trouble and later jumped 20 stories up from 2 buildings to reach where Sukuna was. Also, again, I have to mention that this was Sukuna who was not even in his final form, so his real strength might be bigger than when he fought against Gojo. Now, in regards to speed, well, much like what I did in my analysis video for Deku vs Miles Morales, I tried to measure the two through travel speed and reaction speed. In the case of travel speed, that would go to Meruem, which isn't surprising since he was moving so fast, the Ant King was able to exchange well over 1,000 blows against Netero in under a minute. As such, going by that estimate, he could have likely be going about as fast as hypersonic speed. Maybe even faster after acquiring the ability to fly, and how he got to Knuckles' location despite being nowhere close to the latter. Either way, it's far faster than how Sukuna outran Yuji, who could run at speeds of 37.3 miles per hour. However, for reaction speed, no doubt that Sukuna takes this one, since he could keep up and most times outpace the MC, and he once invaded Choso's piercing blood and attacked faster than the speed of sound. Most of all, upon transforming into his true form, the King of all curses could also keep up with Kashimo's mythical beast Ember, a form that boosts the latter's speed and agility, as well as allow him to shoot out powerful yet fast attacks. And if said form is almost similar to Killula's Godspeed, that means Sukuna could have been reacting to attacks that are fast as lightning. I mean, it could also be light speed, but frankly my last estimate should be enough to allow Sukuna to keep up and outpace the Ant King's immense travel speed. Regardless, let's say that Meruem's own physical stats is above Sukuna's, especially durability, which could allow the former to take multiple Black Flash attacks, as well as survive against some of the latter's dismantle and cleave attacks like Yuji did. The other categories that I'll be getting into is where the Ant King starts to lose ground, and two of them that could have him beat are combat ability and intelligence. Now in the case of intelligence, There is no denying that Meruem is quite smart, like greatly so despite being over a month old. As such, fitting the trait of a strategic fighter, he essentially gained precognition, thus being capable of recognizing and reading the patterns of his opponent's actions. However, while this way of fighting does allow him to exploit his opponent's weakness and penetrate their defense, it does require a certain amount of time for him to completely analyze their fighting style. This is pretty evident during his fight against Netero, who, much like Sukuna during a fight, could also be described as an instinctual fighter thanks to years of experience. Except I would have to argue that Sukuna must have fought and lived much longer than Netero, even before turning into a cursed tool. And if the former's attack patterns are a bit more unpredictable than the latter's, then by the time Meruem figures out Sukuna's tactics, he would probably be much more damaged than how he was when he cut off Netero's legs. Plus, even if Meruem did manage to bypass Sukuna's defense and cut off one of his limbs, it wouldn't mean much since the King of all Curses can use reverse curse energy to heal. Not to mention that Sukuna could simply change his own tactics if his previous one was useless, thus forcing Meruem to rethink his strategy. An example of this is once again the anime version of his fight against Maharaga, where the cursed spirit was seemingly switching up his fighting style and delivering feint attacks in order to slow down the Shikigami's adaptation. What's more, it's not like Sukuna isn't smart himself, and assuming the basis of Nin has a somewhat similar function to curse energy, then I'm sure that after observing it once or twice, the King of all Curses can figure out Meruem's abilities and find a way to counter against them. Also, I can't help but feel that Sukuna's combat style is likely more refined than Meruem's. So, while the Ant King could kill his opponents with his bare hands, as well as being able to hit them at their vital spots, Sukuna is more used to hand-to-hand combat, not to mention superior as he could outclass Maki, who went full Itachi on her own clan. Plus, with his strength, he could just as well deflect most of Meruem's strikes and land a few hits of his own. Anyway, the final category that I'll be going over is the one that has Sukuna's name written all over it, and that's each character's hex. I mean, it's pretty obvious, and while the overall complexity of Nen could be higher than Curse Energy, it doesn't change how Sukuna's own abilities are far higher than Meruem's. Furthermore, thanks to his vast knowledge and understanding of how certain abilities and techniques work, Sukuna could probably see through and get a good grasp of Meruem's Nen abilities as I stated before. Granted, the Ant King does have extraordinary skills with the use of Nen since birth, and with his ability to absorb Nen, he could have been much stronger had he not died so early in the series. Moreover, the ability in question does allow Meruem to copy the abilities of those he consumed, but unless Sukuna is just going to let the Ant King bite his arm off, it's not going to be much use during combat. Frankly, the only Nen ability that Meruem has acquired and could allow him to better combat the Cursed Spirit is the transformation ability he copied from Yuppie, thus giving him some level of versatility and produce attacks that can destroy a relatively small mountain. Nevertheless, it's nothing compared to Sukuna's arsenal, such as his usual and standard ability Shrine, an innate curse technique that allows him to unleash invisible and unblockable slashes. Although it may not seem to be as versatile as Meruem's transformation ability, it's definitely powerful, especially how a single slash from the technique was able to slice a skyscraper. Above all else, after his fight against Gojo, Sukuna was able to enhance the normal output of his slashes to such a large degree, he cut and bypassed the Sorcerer's Infinity, which practically makes Meruem's durability almost null. There's also the fact that Sukuna had the 10 Shells technique, and while Meruem could kill 90% of the Shikigamis, Maharaga is a different story, and with its ability to adapt nearly everything, the King of all Curses could also use that same ability to eventually make all of Meruem's attacks useless. Additionally, Sukuna could outnumber the Ant King by having a 3 vs 1 fight. That being said, Meruem does have the destructive raw power to potentially kill Maharaga in one shot before it can fully adapt to anything. However, against Sukuna's domain expansion, Malevolent Shrine, where he unleashed thousands of indiscriminate and extremely fast slashes in a wide area, yeah, it's pretty much game over for the Ant King. Of course, if Meruem did survive, like how he did against Netero's Zero Hand, and by somehow adjusting his Nen to reduce the slash's cutting effects, Sukuna can just unleash his other ability, Divine Flame, which, as you know, could outmatch Yogo's own firepower and destroy a large portion of a city. It's basically like the poor man's Rose Bomb, only I think Sukuna's Divine Flame is much stronger, and if that's the case, then Meruem is quite literally cooked, since he barely survived a city-wide explosion before. Though you could argue that post Poor Man's Rose Meruem could survive one blast, he would still be greatly damaged. Moreover, Sukuna could just as well increase the potency of his Divine Flame by spamming a Binding Vow. Honestly, the only way that Meruem has a chance of winning if he attacks Sukuna's brain or destroy his gut, as they are the weakness of all sorcerers. but given Sukuna's possible reaction speed, that would be difficult. Either way, it's clear that Sukuna has more hex than Meruem, and for that, the King of all curses will always be the winner of this fight. Unless Hunter x Hunter suddenly bring back the Ant King and make him much stronger, but that's doubtful. Okay, that's basically the end of my analysis video. If you guys have anything else to add regarding the abilities between these two characters, just leave a comment down below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and happy Halloween to everyone.